he's going to come back to England, and he's going to hook up with a lovely young female poetess and playwright, and she's going to help him ghost author one of the stronger memoirs to come out of the War of Independence. He's going to become part of the set of The Prince of Wales, and he's going to lead the kind of wild, racy life in England that he'd been leading in America. And his fortunes will go up and down. Eventually, he'll end up marrying. He'll leave his literary lady friend. He'll end up marrying a rich heiress, and he'll die very comfortable. He'll be promoted, but not given any important commands. A number of sinecures at home. So he'll be knighted, I believe, too. So he ends up very happy. I think he dies. I forget the year, but it's on the anniversary of the Battle of Cowpens. So, just as Americans saw an omen in Jefferson and Adams dying on the same day, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration, and there's omen in Tarleton's passing as well. So maybe we are God's chosen people after all. But did that answer your question? Okay, good.
Yes, I'm wondering if you have looked at the use of black slave regiments in the New Orleans campaign of 1815. If any of the slaves from South Carolina, South, in that area, had moved to the Caribbean, and what would be the British experience in those units that were...
There was one black West Indian regiment with Pakenham's army. There were also, I believe, 2 battalions of free men of color who will fight with Jackson because it's their town that's going to be attacked, and these are free blacks, and a number of them are men of means. And if New Orleans is captured and plundered, that means they're going to be losing home and property. So you'll find African Americans on both sides in that battle. It's interesting, the British will raid in the Chesapeake Bay during the War of 1812. It won't be the kind of long-term presence that they had in 1781 from January into October, but kind of in and out, that kind of thing, hit some islands, hit some towns. And once again, large numbers of blacks, if they can get to the ships, will go. It's an interesting thing about this Yorktown thing. Jefferson, said 30,000 blacks ran away to the British and 27,000 died. I think he's extrapolating from his own experience. He had 30 taken or 30 ran away, and he never got 27 back. And I think he just kind of multiplied by 1,000. So it may have been a smaller number, and I still have to get into Virginia government records, more records, and try and get some plantation records, maybe do some surveys on plantations on the James River, and try and get to a firmer count than I have right now. But there are reports going on for 2 to 3 years after Yorktown, of people complaining about blacks in the inlets and hiding out, in the marshy areas in Chesapeake Bay, hailing British privateers, coming back with the crewmen and helping them raid their old homes and find their masters' valuables, etc. So it's a kind of permeable frontier and a dangerous frontier, because after the French fleet leaves, individual British ships are still free to come back, and they do. Blacks fleeing from South Carolina into the West Indies, etc. Large numbers of blacks are going to end up at Charleston. They're going to end up at Savannah. Large numbers are going to end up in New York. And they're going to get scattered through different parts of the British Empire, and the British are also going to try to set up a black colony in Africa, Sierra Leone. And a few of these people would leave memoirs of their experiences that would be widely distributed by the British anti-slavery movement. So there's a lot of literature. Simon Sharma just did a book focusing on those folks called Crossings. That's done very well. But Am I getting to the nub of your question? Or I'm dancing around, aren't I?
Wondering if the British had gone out and recruited units in the Caribbean because of perceived success?
Not during the Revolution, but the Brit.
About the War of 1812.
Well, I don't know if it had. I don't know if it had that. I don't know if it had if there was a direct cause and effect there. The British, though, it's interesting. They will drive Virginia into the revolutionary movement. At least they'll drive more Virginians into the arms of the revolutionary movement. When at the beginning of the war, Lord Dunmore, the royal governor, who has fled to a British warship, issues a proclamation calling on Virginia slaves to join him, and he's going to form what he called an Ethiopian regiment, and that causes alarm among Virginia slaveholders and makes them all the more resolute to side with the rebel cause and to join the independence movement. 5-6 years later, though, when Cornwallis slaves are going to him, it has a different effect, but 5 years of war, people can lose confidence in a conflict, can lose confidence in the government, and that can change their reaction. So, but I'm not an expert on the black units that were raised in the West Indies in the early 19th century, but the little I've read, that's my thinking. I could be wrong on that. Also seemed to win the battle of public opinion, and we'll go on to these later assignments. Clinton doesn't. Clinton's career is over at that point. I mean, he gets, again, some sinecures, governorship of a fort or something like that, but never gets command troops in the field, never gets to do anything significant after that.
You have to answer for having that big army in New York and never did anything with it towards the end of the war.
That's the interesting thing. Even after Cornwallis is defeated, some letters I've seen from officers in Clinton's army at New York say that they're hoping Cornwallis won't go home, that he'll be sent there because at least he's active, at least he uses the army, which, but he did lead that army to defeat, and he got a lot of his people killed before he moved into Virginia too, chasing around the Carolinas. But the fact that he was trying to get something done instead of just sitting in New York. But it's once the French come in, Clinton's between a rock and a hard place, because if he tries to expand British holdings, if he spreads out British forces, he just makes them more vulnerable not only to attack by the Americans, but being cut off if the French Navy shows up. And the French did try to cut off Newport, Rhode Island. If weather hadn't intervened, they might, and their own timidity, they might have gotten away with it. They might have taken the Newport garrison in 1778. So, but on the other hand, generals are paid to do more than just hold on to a city too. So it's Clinton was very, very good at finding fault in what his contemporaries did, not as good with coming up with brilliant ideas for himself to execute. And I guess a lot of us could fit that description. So this is yes.
You said that Virginia's tobacco crop bolstered the staggering colonial economy. With the loss of all those slaves, what did that do to Virginia's economy, economy in general, and how long did it take?
The war is an economic disaster for all 13 colonies, and all these people take a loss. They will invest a lot of what money they do have in filing claims under the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Loyalists who lost their property and patriots who lost their property were supposed to be able to file and get some sort of restitution, but the British claimed the Americans weren't treating the Loyalists right, so they weren't going to listen to any other claims. An awful lot of claims were filed against French army officers, because it appears that a good number of them, and some of them admitted in their memoirs, came away from the Yorktown campaign with some good cheap help. They didn't care what Washington's orders were to the Continental Army. They weren't giving up some of the new servants they acquired, and there were a number of blacks who were glad to get out of Virginia or be under the protection of these French officers too. So you look at one reason why we end up moving from the Articles of Confederation to our present Constitution is because the massive debts that the governments can't pay off, either the Confederation Congress or the individual states, because the entire American economy is in the dumpster. And not only because of the damage done by the war, but who was our main trading partner before the war? The British, and they closed their ports. Well, you want to be independent? You want to be free? Good. just stay out, we're not doing business with you anymore. And that was a bone of contention. That's something that Washington would try to get changed in Jay's Treaty and just get small concessions, that kind of stuff. So yeah, there were a number of prices paid for independence. It's one reason why New Englanders will decide to try and do something we're trying to do today, open trade with China, because a lot of markets have been closed to them. I think it's 1784, the first American ship will sail across the Pacific and start trading in Canton. So, but
We have time for one more.
Based on your study of history, and in this campaign in particular, do you think that a ruthless military solution can be a successful counterinsurgency strategy? And if so, what criteria?
well, it depends on the situation. I mean, Cornwallis hits Virginia after it's been put through the ringer, and it's already had to pay a heavy price. As I say, most of the Virginia regiments in existence were captured at Charleston, and Virginia has been helping to subsidize the revolution from the very beginning. He's ruthless, in some ways, but it's not mass executions and things like that. He's dealing with a more affluent population. And I think, that's the difference between the United States and maybe some of the cultures we fought. And these are people many of whom have a lot more to lose in a material sense than folks elsewhere. And the same thing happens again in the American Civil War. We wondered why, when we were dropping all these bombs on North Vietnam, et cetera, why weren't they, we Americans would be very upset, and they were hit when they were vulnerable. They were hit where they were vulnerable and at a time when they were most vulnerable. Again, the hard war kicks in after, in the Civil War, it kicks in after there have been 3 years of massive bloodletting. So these folks are hurting in a number of ways, and then when they feel, well, our armies can't defend us anymore, and if we keep resisting, not only will the cause be lost, but how the heck are we going to live once it's over? And maybe we should quit before these guys come to my neighborhood. That seemed to be working for him. But, it all comes tumbling down with Yorktown. It's all erased. It just took one reverse, because we're dealing with much smaller armies in the American Revolution than during the American Civil War. Cornwallis didn't have 60,000 guys. At his back, he had 8,000 at that peak, and then sickness he had 6,000 by the end, that kind of thing. I'm not trying to. Am I giving you an answer? I mean, that's, it's, yeah. So like the British said at the beginning of the war, we should just start burning all the towns on the East Coast, and they'll give up. Well, I don't know if they would have or not, but because it certainly wouldn't have affected farmers living in the hinterland. Oh, Boston's burning. Well, we're okay. I never liked Boston anyway. So, but the fact that Cornwallis, wasn't just doing it on the coast. He could move anywhere. I mean, he's going right up to the eastern side of the Blue Ridge Mountains, right up to Charlottesville, and that's scary too. If they can find me wherever I am, and I can't. I'm a farmer. I can't run. I can't. This is my land. This is my home. So they can come to me. So it was a combination of circumstances. Things were working for him, but then the circumstances turned against him, and they stopped working.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Come over here. I've got for you. Right over here.
Oh, over here. Thank you.
Well, those of you who have been with us for a while know that we've just finished about a month of 18th century events. Our Perspectives series last month was on the French and Indian War. Then we had a French and Indian War weekend wherein we opened our newest exhibit on the Army Heritage Trail, a replica of Redoubt number 10. And now we conclude with Cornwallis's Virginia campaign. I can't think of a better way to do that than with Dr. Urwin, who, as we mentioned earlier, has been a great friend of the Army Heritage and Education Center. But the truth is in the details. details. He's also my advisor at Temple, as he is a number of those in here. We are thrilled to have Dr. Urwin here to do this presentation for us this evening. I know it has certainly expanded a lot of our horizons. We've thought about this campaign in a lot of different ways that perhaps we wouldn't. And as we saw in the question and answer, there are aspects to history, even in the 18th century, that have a bearing on today. So, Dr. Urwin, on behalf of Colonel Ron D'Alessandro and the entire staff of the Army Heritage and Education Center, I'd like to present you this facsimile of your poster as a gift in appreciation for your discussion this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.